maybe we start by just going around and introducing ourselves. I could introduce all the Citizens Bank people, but you guys can do a better job of that and tell us about who you are and what you do for them.
With me, this is Camille d'Amberville. I work in the International Trade Division as a sales rep, supporting letters of credit and all products pertaining to LCs. And Patrick is one of my great partners. and I work with Bill. We work in conjunction with one another.
Yeah, and I'm Pat Gwen. I work on the FX trading desk for the bank. I assist clients with payables and receivables in foreign currency, managing risk associated with that. And occasionally I work with Carmel and Bill as things cross over.
Thank you.
Bill Folker, this is my second stint with the bank, 11 years ago, almost to the day, actually next month. I spent 7 years prior to that, several years ago, with the investment bank. I'm responsible for two products here. One for my past sins is, I guess both for my past sins. One is the government programs business here, the Exim Bank business. And the biggest one, the one that keeps me busy during the day and awake at night, is the supply chain finance business. But Exim Bank's always been one of my favorite institutions, so I'm glad to be here today with the group.
Oh, thank you. I forget to keep muting and unmuting. So, and Mr. Harris.
Yes, I work with Joe Pedrati in Syracuse, and I'm responsible for business banking in the upstate market. And I partner with Pat and Camille on quite a few transactions. So, and Bill as well. So glad to be here. Thank you for Cindy for putting this together.
Thank you, Larry. And Joe, did we talk to you yet? Oh, you're on mute.
I'm all set.
All right.
All right, Joe Pedrati. I work with Larry, and I work with the other folks on the Patrick more closely with the FX. Bill once in a while and Carmel once in a while, but been here locally with the bank for over 3 years and been in the community for many. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Joe, and thanks for inviting all of your partners to come help us with this. I appreciate that a lot.
Thank you.
Jim, tell us about who you are and why this is important to you. I know that it is.
Yeah, so I'm Jim DiAugustino. Hopefully you can hear me well, Cindy. I'm in the truck right now, but I'm the center director for TDO. TDO is the Regional Manufacturing Extension Partnership Center, and like Cindy alluded to earlier, we do a lot of outreach and support and connections with businesses in need. Particularly, my center deals with manufacturers, and so I'm really looking forward to hearing about some of the programs and projects and things today, because my sense is that there's a lot of opportunity that I may not even be aware of, that some of the folks on the line might be able to help with.
I was just thinking, Jim, one of the things that I'm guessing might be of interest to Bill, although it's not our topic for today, is the whole reshoring effort.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking too.
So the MEP centers are actually just recently received funding to help companies reshore. So I'm betting that that's something that, Bill, you'd be interested in hearing more about from Jim at some point as well. So, yeah. And John, the mystery guest behind the phone number.
Yeah, my name is John Tracy. I work for the U.S. Commercial Service of the U.S. Department of Commerce, or the trade promotion arm of commerce. And we work with local organizations in developing and expanding their export markets.
John's been a great resource for our companies for many things. They kind of have feet on the ground all across the world. So when companies are looking to do their exporting, we send them to John, and they help them find where and how they should be doing their business elsewhere. So great resource for us. And I know we're
Thanks.
missing a couple people, but was that, you were saying something or no? I didn't want to interrupt. So I wonder if we should go ahead and get started with the program. Should I do the screen share, Bill? Is that appropriate?
Sure, that'd be great. Yeah, that'd be perfect. Yes, appreciate that.
All righty. Let me see here. Get this pulled up to the right view. And can you see that?
No, we don't see that.
Why not? Let me see. Let's do this. How about that? That work?
No.
It should be. Why is that not working?
401k, are you kidding me?
Screen share. That's the one. Uh-oh.
There you go.
Let's see it now.
Oh, now
You
you
got it now.
There we
Yes.
go. There we
You
go.
can see it
Perfect.
now.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting us. We certainly appreciate opportunities like this to speak about things that we think are very relevant. So one of the things we're going to do here is talk about the agency Exim Bank, which is a very fine one. I think I used to work there many, many years ago. I've been involved in participating actually in their training program still, but so it's been near and dear to my heart for over 40 years. I've run the full gauntlet of export finance business with Exim Bank. I've done wide body aircraft financing, project financing, things like that. But what we'll be talking about today really is most relevant to companies in your region is the Working Capital Guarantee Program. And I think it's an underutilized resource for what it does, for what it can do, and how it can be used to assist local companies in their business goals, as well as, helping them maintain their presence in the local communities by maintaining jobs. And there's a huge correlation between exporting and jobs in this country. As I said, nobody is self-sufficient in anything anymore. And Exim Bank, I think, has done a great job over the years in trying to address needs in the business community there. Unfortunately for them, they got caught up in a political, nonsensical battle 3 or 4 years ago. And to make a long story short about that is they did not have their charter renewed, which was mind-boggling to me. It was actually crazy. The two sides of the house just couldn't get together on it, allegedly. And they've been effectively shut down, which took a lot of the wind out of their sails, sadly, at a time when American companies needed them. So they seemingly have righted that ship. And to show you how important Exim Bank is, for any bill to go forward in a government agency, it has to be sponsored through the various committees, finance, et cetera. And that's where they met their logjam on their recertification, their rechartering. And there was a lot of resistance in the Hill on both sides, of both houses, about not wanting to do this. It was mind-boggling to the business community. But anyway, Exim Bank used a very, very rarely used tactic to get a bill to the floor. And so that circumvented the committees. And it's very, very rarely used. I give them credit for doing this. And as a result, it got put back on the floor without having to go through the committees. And the vote was 98-1. 98 yeas, 1 nay, 1 wasn't there. And I think the one that wasn't there was Barack Obama at the time, whatever. But anyway, that shows you how underlying support there was. So anyway, let's roll to the next screen here, Cindy, if you wouldn't mind. Exim Bank's mission in life is to support small companies. They provide 3 programs, but the one we're going to talk about most is the Working Capital Guarantee Program. So the important point, they were reauthorized and they're good for another 7 years. So we're not going to have to go through that political battle once again, which was decimating to the Exim Bank's business. And it really, it put them so far back in the chain of things. People did find alternatives, but again, they were effectively shut down for, importantly, much too long. So anyway, and one thing I find about Exim Bank, and I said this to Cindy and my banking colleagues here beforehand, is they've done an exceptional job in times of need when they've been open for business. Go back to the Mexican crisis in the early 80s, continuing right on through. When they tend to fall asleep or when people tend to forget about them is when times are going great. So with COVID coming about, I think they did step up to the table again. And the most dramatic thing that they did for the market, for the companies that use Exim Bank, as well as for the banks that use Exim Bank with their companies, is they raised their guarantee percentage from 90 to 95%. And that is huge, although it seems only 5 percentage points. But effectively, these transactions carry now the full faith and credit of the U.S. government, and it's an agency guarantee that's very good. I'll date myself, and I've actually seen the opinion on that, which was written by the then Attorney General Robert Kennedy. Now, I was not working back when Robert Kennedy was the Attorney General, but I actually had a copy. I don't know where that is. But anyway, huge difference they can make by upping the guarantee to 95%. They did that very quickly, got it approved, and that's been in the market. It expires the end of this month because it was all a COVID thing, literally jumped on it last year. But in speaking to the managing director of Exim Bank, as we thought, it's going to be rolled out there. I don't think there's any way they can come back to it. The important thing about that is why it can't go to 100% is, I don't know, but it never can go to 100%. And Exim Bank basically has to self-fund itself, which it does. It does. So that was the first change that they made. So if we want to just roll forward, we'll talk about that and we'll bolt all this stuff together as we go through. But it addresses companies' international needs. The Export-Import Bank, there's not a lot of import involved with Exim Bank anymore. So it is primarily, almost entirely, an export-focused institution. What the banks and the companies can use this program for is, obviously, it's per the screen here. Banks can get involved with the company, and they have the Exim Bank guarantee. That's huge as far as capital allocation. It allows the bank to take a look at transactions in a different vein. And export guarantees or export insurance cannot be used to make a bad deal good. And no one would say that. But on the same token, they can make a good deal better. And that's the intent here, is to try and make a good deal, a good situation even better. What it does for the companies in the region is it allows companies to basically tap liquidity sources that they might not otherwise have. It allows them to expand their international sales, and it advises them to provide financing basically for their own company. And it does that by, under the Working Capital Guarantee Program, it allows a bank, any bank for that matter, to consider foreign-based receivables in what is borrowing-based. And I know our bank and virtually every bank that I know of has a policy, a credit policy that says, no foreign-based receivables in a borrowing base unless they're insured or covered by the Exim Bank Guarantee Program. So it allows a company to tap additional levels of liquidity to support their businesses. And that's huge. By just allowing the foreign-based receivables to be included, it's a separate borrowing base, but it expands the borrowing capability of the company, okay? If you want to roll forward on that. There's some pretty basic eligibility requirements in the program. And if anybody has any questions, raise your hand or pop in at any point in time. We'll gladly address them here or at the end. But the easiest one to meet is the company must be located in the U.S. So we're having this conversation here, you're having the conversation there. So you can almost always check that box. And by the way, that includes foreign-based companies who have an operation here. So just because they may, but the key thing is that they are based here and they export out of here. So that's the starting criteria, but that is the easiest one to sort of check that box. The second point is they're not in the venture capital business. So it has to be an existing ongoing concern there. They want to see at least 1 year operating history of the company there. Frankly, from my bank's perspective and most, you probably want to see more than that, but they do want to see an existing company. So I'm not going to do, I got one approved pre-start several years back. And from a credit perspective, they have to have a positive net worth. And these programs are our credit programs. The bank looks at it as one of its clients. So it has to make sense from a bank to be looking at these deals, even if the Exim Bank guarantee is involved, and we'll touch upon that. So we want to roll forward a little bit. Here is where we also had some changes. Again, it's an export-based program. The goods must be shipped from the U.S. and exported to U.S. Exim Bank eligible countries. And Exim Bank has something called the country limitation schedule. It's a list from A to Z. You can go online there. I'll point you to where you can see it. But it gives the terms and conditions for consideration of any one of Exim Bank's programs in any one of those countries. and what's allowed, what's not allowed, what special conditions may be required. And I know one of the questions came up in the suggested points to cover here, which we'll jump in right now. It's China. You know, and how does Exim Bank look at China? I guess we could say, how does China look at U.S. also? But that's an interesting one. So it's always a relevant topic, whether it be COVID or otherwise. And under Exim Bank's policy decisions for private-based companies, for risk of private-based companies in China, mainland China, Exim Bank's policy requires that that deal be supported by a letter of credit issued by a Chinese bank or other bank. But so they can't do open account business. An open account receivable in China is ineligible under these programs. And we'll come back to that one in some other capacities also. Products must have at least 50% U.S. content, and that's it's gotten to be an easier box to check now than it was when I certainly started way back when with Exim Bank. In the day, you basically had to do a line item, check. But right now, it's on a combined base. They'll look at the whole on a holistic basis and see, generally speaking, is 50% of this based in the U.S. and exported from the U.S. I can actually say that Exim Bank has come to the table literally with me several times in finding ways to get that done. I've actually brought them out, we've sat down, and they've gone over that. So within reason, that's another box that you can check pretty easily. Services can be included, but again, they have to be performed by U.S. The no-no is military or defense items. They have other programs that does that stuff, but anything that goes bang or boom is not something that we or they would be able to be considered in one of these programs. Okay.
That's all the
If you want to
ITAR
just-
type stuff.
What's that?
All the ITAR type stuff. That's
Yeah, there's different agencies that look at that, but for very good reason. But that's a no-no. There's no variation. There's no way to get around that here. Okay.
Okay.
So this is the important rationale of why this stuff is very good and important for local companies, for any company for that matter. The exporter, which is your local company there, basically can use these companies to purchase finished product. It allows them to address the working capital needs they may have. Their cash conversion cycle, right? What they buy, when they sell it, when they have to pay for it on this end, and when they collect from it on the other end. So the program is definitely a value-added tool that they can use for that. Used for all kinds of purchases of various widgets or whatever, but it supports what these companies do. All right, so that's it. Now, the use of the Exim Bank program takes a couple of different paths. And one is that it will allow a bank to create a separate borrowing base constituted by foreign-based eligible receivables, of which the company can advance against, much as it would under its domestic line. The advance rates are exceptionally good. It's 90% on eligible, which is even higher than usually domestic. And in the calculation of eligible collateral, they will also include working process, which most banks won't or can't do. Frankly, now they're not only looking at export-related inventory, they're actually going to look at the entire inventory base to support these programs. But an unheralded use of the program, in addition to advances, and this is probably the biggest one, is it allows banks to issue standby letter of credit for bid bonds, performance bonds, advanced payment guarantees, which is used to small companies. You might have a great product, you're going to sell it to somebody overseas, and they like your product, and they kind of know you, but you say, okay, I want X% up front. And, you have to come up with some kind of collateral to support that. This program can be used for that with a minimal amount of collateral to support it. Well, as with any advance-based program, you have to have 100% of the collateral, net eligible collateral, to support your advance, 90%. In the case of Exim Bank's working capital guarantee program and issuance of standbys, for everything but warranty purposes, and we'll get back to that, the minimum is 25%. So think about that. It's a lot of bang for your buck. And I have very successfully, I've worked with Patrick and some of Patrick's clients, and even negotiated it down to 10%. So for 10 cents on the dollar, you can get a standby issue as far as collateral. It's huge, and it's the biggest use of Exim Bank. And they state very proudly that they've never had an issue there with the issuance of a standby. And there's part of the process also assists U.S. companies in order to issue the standby. one thing as part of the process is collectively the bank and the company would work together and submit Exim Bank some of the details on as far as the beneficiary of that standby letter of credit. And Exim Bank is going to run that through their sifter, through their portal, their channels, and they'll come back saying, yay, good. And they're not necessarily, what they're going to check to see if there's been any egregious calls by this company in the marketplace. It's a huge helping tool to assist companies that try and do the right thing. So, and again, it's another way of indirectly or directly financing a company's foreign receivables. Keep in mind that the Exim Bank guarantee from a bank's perspective doesn't cover the repayment of the foreign receivables that constitute the borrowing base. It covers default of the loan that the bank creates based upon those. So they do cover different things. Credit insurance covers the actual payment of the foreign receivables, whereas this program covers the bank's lending to the company based upon a pool of collateral. So going forward. Working capital guarantee requirements, like any program or any bank, they do have some, and most of them aren't too bad. If there's a person or persons who own 20% or more controlling interest of the company, the bank, the Exim Bank program states that it requires a guarantee of principals there. Now, keep in mind that often these programs are to bank customers. So if we've made a credit decision with our other businesses not to require that personal guarantee, Exim Bank will probably follow our suit there. But the stated policy is 20% or more, but they're generally quite amenable to working within reason on that. They may or may not require, and again, venture capital groups are exempt from that requirement. If they're owned by a VC firm, they're not going to give any guarantees anyway. But anyway, my last point there is if the bank has credit approval rather, for a credit that does not require personal guarantees for supporting its other facilities, they'll typically follow us. Let me jump in there and explain something that we have a designated lender status with Exim Bank. They've given our bank through our credit policy, which they have vetted and seen in advance. We do a pretty good job in that regard. But we can basically commit Exim Bank up to a certain amount of Exim Bank facility without having to go back to them specifically. So that allows the bank to make the decisions. It's the bank's credit process. So I always get asked by our own, loan officers who are talking to their clients, how long does it take to get one of these approved? I said to the loan officer, as fast as you can get it through the Citizens Bank credit process. So that's a positive thing that we have delegated lender status. Most do, we do. There's 4 levels, and we're not at the top level. We're at the third highest level of that. But it's been more than enough to basically satisfy our customer needs. But it's our credit process, and that's what Exim Bank likes, because in that credit process, when we go to tell them why we've done it, so it's after the fact we've approved it, we also show them our credit proposal, internal credit approval there, which usually substantiates the extensive relationships that we have sitting alongside of these things, and they love that. They don't want to be the only lender in one of these deals. So that's why they delegate to ourselves and other banks, is we're in it for the relationship purposes also. That's where Patrick gets involved in selling them one of the other bank products in addition to the balance sheet. So that's a very positive thing that we do have. We and several banks have going for us. I want to roll that. As I said before, the basis of any one of these is a separate borrowing base, which is constituted by foreign base eligible receivables. So, there's a process to go through that. China, for example, is ineligible unless it's covered by a letter of credit. The bank requires Exim Bank, lenders, to have a valid and enforceable security interest. Well, these are ABL deals. We're basically a secured lender to all these companies, so that's usually not an issue at all. And one thing that's changed from when I put this slide out, the primary collateral consists of all export-related accounts receivable and export-related inventory. And they'll expand that to the inventory. So I think they give you a pretty wide range of opportunities for considering this use of this program. Okay. There's a whopping fee involved with this. It's $100. That's the application. It's a standard application. Sometimes it's a pain in the neck to fill it out. It does ask a whole mess of questions, but there's no way around that. And I don't think that's a bad thing at all. There is an Exim Bank fee covers the credit. They've changed the structure of that, but it's quite competitive. I've not lost a deal or lost a potential opportunity because of that fee. But that's obviously passed through to the company. It's all part of the discussion in the process of how much it's going to cost and who pays what. But they're upfront costs there. But as far as the interest rate, our bank would determine what sort of interest rate they charge like this. But it's usually consistent with what we have on our other facilities, as it would be with other banks also. So that's the general fee structure and the cost involved with one of doing these on a pure dollar basis. We can roll a little bit forward. The documentation, there's a couple of things. The main one is the application, of course. It's got to be signed, and if not signed and dated, they'll send it back, but we'll get that here. There's something called an export impact certificate. That is a required document that a bank, our bank, any bank who's doing one of these must get from their client. And it's basically an assertion of what's being shipped, when, where, and how. But it's attached when you check a box and they sign it. But that's a critical document too. I would have to have that when I go to them to tell them why we've done it, or if there's been a problem, why we did it. And the last one is a borrower's agreement. It's 26 pages. And this is non-negotiable. This is signed by the client. In this case would be, the local company there and Exim Bank. And what this basically says is if something goes wrong here, and Exim Bank have had to pay my bank or any bank because of something that somebody didn't do here, this is the document that Exim Bank would waive back. And the client says, hey, remember us. So it's an absolute core requirement. I've never really had too many questions on it, but it is non-negotiable. It's Exim Bank's document, but it's a critical document to have in place. Funny, it's 26 pages, and this is where you got a question sometimes what the government does. Page 25 is empty. It says refer to page 26. I don't know why they continue to do that, but it's true. Anyway, as far as a bank and the company is concerned, there are ongoing reporting requirements. So at the end of each month, within a few days, it's a couple weeks past month end, a borrowing-based certificate, separate borrowing-based certificate based upon the foreign eligible receivables has to be signed and submitted. It's, of course, reviewed by the bank, but that's not different than any other ABL, a borrowing-based facility, but it is a separate one. So I've never had any objections to that. I get more, I have to do more work on that than the company has to do to produce it. So, but those are the core standard requirements of any one of these programs. And I don't think they're too onerous, and they actually make a lot of sense at every one of these steps or stages. So, size, there is no size requirement, but the bank has a size requirement. Obviously, we want to be materially important. It has to make economic sense. So within reason, we certainly have facility sizes. I don't think we're ever talking about something that's too small, nor frankly, do we see things that are too big. A good experience, and I know we spoke about this, Cindy, before the call here, is we had a very, very large program with one of your local companies there, and I can say this because it's unfortunately it's passed, but we had about a $30 million program with a company called Census in Syracuse, New York, and it was a tremendously important program to them. It was tremendously important to Exim Bank, so much so that the chairman came with me to Exim Bank to see Census one day, along with your local congressman. So that company used this program to facilitate its export business, but importantly, it also used that business to maintain a huge part of its workforce. And one of the questions on the Exim Bank application is, how much of your jobs, or growth or maintenance, is attributed to your export effort? And in that case, it was 200 people that they attributed to maintain their jobs based upon the company's export. It was at pretty rough times in the area as well as in the country. So that was a huge figure. Exim Bank loved that, which is why they wanted to go talk to the company and say how important that number was to us and to the Exim Bank. So, but that's one of the questions that's asked in the application. So, but again, getting to the size, it's got to be economically viable to make one of these work. There's work involved, so unfortunately or fortunately, that's a dose of reality that we do put on that. The guarantee, as I said before, has been increased at use for 100 years. It's not 100. They were established in 1948. It's been 90% maximum. And this was a COVID reactive thing. They went to 95% because they realized U.S. companies needed help. And one way in which they could entice banks to help these companies even more, in addition to PPE loans and things like that, which our bank does a tremendous job on. I won't steal anyone's thunder on there, but we're off the charts on that. But they did, in a traumatic situation, increase the guarantee. And that wasn't easy, but they got it done. And the guess is it's going to stick around that way for a while. So stay tuned. It has never been worse than 90, but it has never been in 95 before. The repayment terms, loan facilities are typically annual. We can get a facility for 2 years. That's rare, but it can be done, right? But every year the fee is paid annually in advance. So, but most facilities are 1 year annually, renewable, reviewable, etc. And the next point is, it probably doesn't mean much to most, but the loans can be transaction specific or revolving. That comes into play sometimes on the type of structure of the deal. And to that point is, they can be obviously revolving, they can be repetitive, but sometimes specific isn't the worst thing in the world. And many of these are specific to a certain need that the company has. But it's just a talking point early on that gets put in the checkbox on the application of what are you looking for here. The main point of the next box is this is huge because, as you can see, the advance rates are incredibly generous. And I don't believe most banks go to 90% advance rate on their eligible borrowing basis, like Exim Bank allows the bank to do here. So that in itself is a huge advantage and one of the main drivers. So if you're going to be advanced against it, perfect. And inventory, up 75% advance rate, and they will include work in process. And that's a box that is included in most borrowing bases. So as you can see, local companies can take advantage of pretty generous advance rates to satisfy their and their customers' needs. So those are pretty good selling points there. Which, we'll stop here for a second. And again, if there's any questions, please. But having seen this, and I've gone through all the good, and there's a lot of good here. You might wonder why, they're not doing as much as probably they wish they were doing, or sometimes it's the market questions. Well, when they closed down for those 2 years, it was really devastating to their reputation in the market of assisting companies. So it forced companies to have to find alternative solutions, which some cases they were able to. But that set the market back. There's no question about that. And it was not Exim Bank's fault. It was a politically driven thing, but that really took a lot of the wind out of the sails. So I can't understate what that meant as far as our efforts in trying to sell this product. But one thing we did as trusted advisors, and we use that term here loosely at Citizens Bank, but it's an important term. We had 15 or 16 programs at the time, and I went out to each and every one of them personally and suggested, as we saw this, everyone, the market saw this coming. It was an ugly political discussion. So to the extent that the clients would listen, I said, hey, it would be my recommendation that you extend every one of these out as far as you can right now. And almost to a T, they all did. So we bought an extra year because Exim Bank wasn't going to renege on that. So, but after a year, they still were unopened, so I wasn't able to renew those, nor was the market. So we keep in mind, we won't have that problem. We're good for at least another 7 or 8 years, whatever it is now, till their next charter battle, but that'll be someone else's argument down the road, I think. But as you can see, I'm a big fan of the program and Exim Bank's ability to support companies. What I'll also suggest to you is as you nurture one of these deals along, I or the bank that you would deal with can certainly engage Exim Bank in discussions to go over these points. And Exim Bank likes to join in. As I said, I brought them in to analyze the foreign content. I brought them up to companies to see firsthand what they're looking at. And they're a pretty good partner. And Mark Klein is the managing director of their effort here in the program. And I know Mark, and he'd be, as I said, if I had a little bit more notice, I could have had him join here today. They love to help companies, and they like to hear about your successes, whether it be the bank and or the companies, because that's what they're judged on at the end of the day, how much they're able to assist U.S. companies in their export efforts. So we want to roll. Want to roll again there? Summary. From a bank, obviously the benefits are pretty obvious. We have the advantage of being able to create another product supporting our clients for which we have the U.S. government guarantee. And that's good for all kinds of reasons, as you can imagine, from the regulatory perspective, from the capital. But it really provides us an ability to have different conversations with our customers to support them with somewhat of a traditional, yet a little bit different product base. But it does provide us capital and credit benefits, but not making a bad deal good. Again, Ex-Im Bank starts with what else do you have in addition to your Ex-Im Bank loan, and that's really important part of the discussion.
What's that? Oh, can't hear you. Got to call us back, I guess. So Jim, I was wondering about the application for some of the things that Healthway is doing and whether that's something that Mark might be interested in learning about.
Yeah, that was the first company that came to mind when we were looking at all this. I honestly don't know what, Vince has already worked themselves into up there, but I need to find out because I think there's a lot of merit to all of this. And I think there's a lot of, potential if Vince isn't already, engaged or he hasn't already looked into it.
That might be something Mark could be. Well, they didn't have a CFO before, right?
Exactly. Yeah, now with Mark aboard, I think this is definitely something that would be of interest. I was curious while we're waiting for Bill, but do we have like a one-pager or something that, we could share with clients like Healthway? Oh, Bill, I can see your mouth moving.
And Joe's on mute. I don't know if one of Joe or Larry might be able to tell us if there is a one pager to.
Does Bill need to be readmitted?
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, you got to readmit him, but I would think the Healthway company, which I know pretty well, Vince and his group. I mean, that would be a great one, I think, for Bill to talk to because of all the foreign work they do. I mean, they export those air cleaners right now, I think, all over the world, along with domestic. So, yeah, I would think that would be a great person for one of the companies I think he would bring a lot of value as well as Patrick.
Yeah,
I'd be happy to make the intro there. I'm very close with Vance and with the new CFO that Cindy mentioned. His name's Mark Hall. And actually, the reason I was in my truck earlier is because I was coming from Healthway, so I'm pretty much there about every day.
Yeah.
And Joe, for what it's worth, Mark Hall he's actually agreed to be on our little council here in planning these events. So I know that he's interested in being a lot more engaged with the IBA and getting involved with some of this stuff. So
yeah. Carmel on the line here would be the first point guard on this one. But these are the kind of things that I think are great opportunities to have discussions with clients about their needs, potential solutions, and it's very topical now with everyone's in need of some assistance on the working capital needs of the firm. The cash conversion cycles are essential. So by all means, the more the merrier there. And I'm sure Ex-Im Bank would welcome that opportunity to create more business for them too. So.
Yeah, and there's
we
a few
do
other.
have a one pager. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I was gonna say we do have a one pager that we can share with you.
Perfect. Because I do have a couple other clients in mind too that are heavy exporters as well. Now I don't know how intense their capital or working capital needs are, but I definitely think it's worth presenting to them as well. So yeah, if I can get that one pager, I think we've got a lot of good prospects that
yeah,
keep in mind,
it would not make any sense for a company to not be able to export because they couldn't pay for the goods to get them rolling. You know what I mean?
Right.
That'd be a shame.
Hey, James.
Look at their borrowing base your domestic borrowing base, and if they're using it, and to what extent they're using that, obviously, is a good indication. But think about it, that right now you're excluding foreign-based receivables, which may be a big chunk of what that company does. So this would allow an expansion, effectively, of that borrowing base to buy a separate one. But that would be a critical thing to look at. Look at your clients and see what foreign-based receivables they have in their AR aging report, et cetera, that you're excluding because of credit policy from that. Right? And then we also have other solutions. In addition to Exim Bank, we have other suggested, perhaps something for maybe China is in there or something can't work. But we do have other solutions to discuss with ways in which you may be able to internally address the foreign-based receivables to expand that ability to lend or assist this company. So.
That'd be great. Thank you.
And Jim,
Yes.
it's Joe Pedrati. I can quarterback between our foreign people. If you and I want to get together, if you have something that you want to, we can set up a meeting with and all that. You can work directly with me. I'll set up all the things here.
Perfect.
With Carmel, Jim, and Patrick. I'll handle all that for you. So you got a one-stop shop kind of thing right here.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question is, who would I contact? Who's running lead? Yep.
Yeah.
Perfect, Joe. Thanks.
So
Yeah.
Joe's the guy with the flashlights, right?
Yeah, I'm the one that has to go
Way
in the
to go.
cave.
And Joe, my email is pretty simple.
Mike, go ahead.
Mine is jim@tdo.org.
Oh, I'm going to use yours.
None
Yeah,
of it's hard to spell.
So just if
I
you
will.
would send me your contact info, and I'll be happy to connect with you when I'm able to develop some of these opportunities.
Sure. I'll get it out to you after the meeting, Jim. Thank you.
Perfect. Yep.
Yeah, Jim, you and John and I can kind of put our heads together too and think about what are some other good companies that really should know about this, that, it could help them in a very good way.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, from my perspective, working for a couple of large banks, these people we have in front of us, probably the best I've ever worked with in the past. And I'm not disparaging anyone else. They know, between Jim, Carmel, and Patrick, they know those markets very well. And as you know, from our perspective here in Syracuse, we want to get our folks sending their products, all over the world. And people like our friends at Morris Manufacturing, which do a lot of overseas work. My good friend there, I'd love to get him in front of these guys. And
so I'm smiling because Morris was, after Healthway, Morris was the next company that I was going to talk with Nate and see if this is something that Nate's looked into.
Yeah, Nate and I go back a long way. We've served on a board together. Nate and his business done tremendous, and I like to have Nate in there.
Nate is our board chair for MACNY.
Yes.
So that would be good if we can do anything to help them. That doesn't hurt. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I know they're sending product all around the world, and like I said, they jumped into mine right after Healthway.
Yeah.
What about Giovanni? Are they doing much in the way of exporting or?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure, Cindy. Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure. I know they do a lot of the imports, don't they? They get a lot of stuff in. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I believe so.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, what I'll do coming out of this, I mean, Joe, we'll connect, but
yes,
got a couple of good leads, but that one pager I'll share with my staff as well. And there might be some other, good connections. I mean, folks are always, we come across manufacturers in need all the time, and knowing about programs like this, that's just, as Cindy knows, it's like another feather in the cap to kind of hand them like, hey, have you thought about this, or do you know about that?
Yeah, Jim and I work very similarly, as we don't have a product to sell, we have solutions. So there comes any kind of a problem, we love to be able to pull out a program, a contact, somebody to help them with what that problem is. So it's a lot of fun to be in that role, but it means we have to keep up to speed on to what all is out there to help these.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know what else I'll do? I'll have Carmel send it to you, a copy of the latest Exim Bank country limitation schedule. You
Okay.
can see the roadmap of what they would allow considered. I think, that would be a good thing for you to have, Cindy, too. I mean, the Exabank's website is actually pretty good. But I think that's a valuable tool for anybody, because if there's a lot of X's on any country, it kind of tells you a lot. That's for a reason.
Yep.
I mean, nobody's in this for charity. So, for example, Venezuela has X's right across the line. There's nothing they will consider in Venezuela.
Imagine
The
that.
funky one, and I had to spend a lot of time down in Venezuela, so I won't go there right now in business. But, the interesting thing, and this was a topical ask, in what is the opinion on China? And, they're difficult to deal with, as we know now. Tariffs have had an effect on everybody's lives, I think. But the very fact that China, on the country limitation schedule, the requirement is basically for a guarantee of a bank to support any Exim Bank program. And I think that has a lot to do with jurisdiction of law and maybe be able to pursue something down the end of the road. Now, obviously, Taiwan doesn't have that constraint, but that hasn't changed, and I don't think that's going to change. And what Mark, the managing director of Exim Bank, kind of gave me a caution with is, hey, Bill, there's a new one coming out. They come out every month or every 45 days. He goes, check Argentina, because obviously there's some changes brewing in Argentina. Now, we're not, it's a difficult market anyway, but it's an easy one to check because it's alphabetical. It'll be one of the first 5, Azerbaijan, Argentina. You'll see it at the front of the reporting list there. But it's really good information and data to have as to what's kind of going on out in the world. And, I know we have a colleague from one of the agencies, the regional agencies, and I think you folks do a great job in extolling the virtues of various government agencies and what they can do to assist companies. And there's still a lot of data missing and information missing out there. So I think the more that you work together with Exim Banks of the world and people like ourselves, the more people will have out getting this message out there. So I certainly appreciate your efforts over the years. It's been tremendous. I know the SBA is another program, and our bank is quite active in that's not a topic here. I don't do it, never did. But our bank and many other banks are quite active in the SBA program, which are also another very good tool to have to assist. Okay, so
One
I
of
think
the that I've been thinking about too is that, because of the pandemic, we've had a lot of companies who've retooled and are now making things they never made before and all that. Well, as this pandemic begins to wear down or wind down, now they have this capacity, and what do you do with it? Well, there's the whole southern hemisphere, right? That they're, kind of just the opposite of where we are. A lot of them are just coming on board, or now we've got extra capacity, so could we use it to sell there?
That's a topical point, and it's sort of a trendy observation. The United States, relative to other civilized and affluent nations around the world, we've never been export oriented as a country. We have a couple 300 million people that buy everything from pet rocks to airplanes. So, we've basically, for the most part, been pretty self-sufficient to deal with inside our own borders. So our export effort, as big as it is, we are the world's biggest exporter, but relative to our GDP, GNP, it's a fraction of what a lot of other countries have. So I think there's an acute awareness now that there's a huge market out there. Your emerging markets, your middle markets of the world are out there. There's the middle market around us in the surrounding countries is growing at a heck of a lot bigger rate than we are growing here in that regard. So the other point I bring out is if we as a bank are not talking to our clients about these products, right? And the same will hold true if our clients are not talking to their clients about export sales. I can guarantee you somebody else is. I mean, our biggest client as a bank is somebody else's biggest target. And from a company's perspective, your biggest client is somebody else's client. If you take that defensive tactic to try and find solutions to get things done, as opposed to just don't accept the status quo or think that it's going to stay the same, because one of the trends that we see here, and it's all around us, is the ability of companies now to resource their buying and their selling. And the pandemic was huge, and that's my biggest business is supply chain finance. And the volumes in that business are growing exponentially for that very reason. So I always challenge our bankers, hey, if we're not talking about this to our clients, guess what? Other banks are knocking on the door saying this is what they're doing. But the companies should have the same approach to be protective of their business and look for solutions to try and do more with less. No, the other thing is Patrick and I have dog teamed on these things a few times because there's a direct correlation between foreign exchange and what we do. You know, because not everything's in U.S. dollars, and this is a good pitch for Patrick. And our bank has a lot of ability to assist small companies in all of their foreign exchange related needs, whether they're not covered by a program like this. But international trade requires a lot of solutions for a lot of different product sets.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bill. Actually, I wanted to mention, I mean, one of the things that has happened during the pandemic is the U.S. dollar has weakened somewhat considerably. I mean, we just look to our neighbors to the north, Canada, over the past year. Actually, it's strengthened against the dollar almost 14%. We actually hit a 3-year low on dollar Canada this morning. So we actually hit 123.66. And, you know, that says to me, anybody in the U.S. exporting to Canada, you have an advantage that you didn't have a year ago. I mean, a 13, almost 14% movement in the dollar. If you are pricing in Canadian dollars, you can be much more competitive. So that's what I'm pitching to my clients now. And even you mentioned China. We do have China capabilities where we can receive Chinese renminbi, and that's actually fallen over 9% since May. And then we can go across the board. Euro, you know, that's about 11%. I mean, most of the major currencies that I deal in, and some of the more exotics like China, everything's pretty much strengthened against the dollar. So that's a tangible, you know, benefit to our exporters here. So it does take, you know, for the business banking scene, it does take education, which I've been with the bank 20 years doing business banking client business. And it is a lot of education, but once people are up to speed and they understand the possibilities, they're going to be ahead, as Bill mentioned, of their next competitor or somebody who's competing for the same business. We try to put it so our customers have an advantage over their competitors.
Yeah. And that comes back to the point of all the, like I speak from Citizens Bank perspective, you know, our mantra is to provide value-added solutions to our clients and be trusted advisors. So, you know, that also points to my point. It seems it's a big world out there, but it's kind of shrinking around us all the time. But the ease to get information on foreign-based content, whether through the internet or whatever, you know, that has become easier. And anything else, it's only continue to become easier to get companies access to some of these foreign markets. So I think there's a lot of tools and opportunity for discussion here, and I would look forward to that.
Hey, one other, oh, sorry, Cindy. I was gonna just mention one other thing. You guys got me thinking, you know, as Cindy and I are part of the IBA, and John Tracy is as well. And one of the programs that we do through the IBA is called Export New York. And I'm not sure, you know, how many of you folks on the line are familiar with that, but it's, you know, from a real high level, it's a foundational exporting crash course for companies. You know, they send, you know, their, you know, a couple folks, you know, that are, you know, in the shipping, sales, operations.
Yeah.
Yep. And they get a crash course in basically everything that they're going to come across, you know, trying to export their products. And so I'm thinking that, you know, everything that I've heard today would really be good, you know, conversation for the Export New York program. And so we're actually planning a fall 2021 cohort. And, you know, we do this through Syracuse University, the Whitman School up there. But we're going to have like a hybrid model this year, you know, virtual and in person. And so, you know, John and I are on our little Export New York team, but I'm happy to talk to, you know, the other folks on our team to see if there might be a way we could incorporate this type of thing into our Export New York content.
Yeah, you know, that's an interesting point. And again, the last several years, I do a lot of speaking on the supply chain finance business. And usually the audience is one that, you know, I wouldn't have the tutorial that we have here for that, because I kind of got away from that, and I would run panels about, you know, current trends in the market. And when I would do these, I would moderate it, but I would bring in, you know, for example, in the supply chain finance business, I bring in a big foreign bank because they have a different opinion of the world. I would bring in a big domestic bank, sometimes a money center bank. I would usually bring in a credit insurance company because they have a really good insight of what's going on about people getting paid or not paid. I would also bring on my panel is a credit insurance broker who sees business from banks as well as companies big and small. And it just created a tremendous amount of good dialogue on these things. So the good news about it is it's very successful. The bad news is every time I did one, I got asked to do two more. But I think that's something to consider because it's not circles and arrows. Because you lose a lot of people. This is a good small audience to do circles and arrows. But when you're talking about trends, it's really applicable stuff to people. And it created a lot of dialogue. And you know, I would bring in, I brought in people who I've been in the supply chain finance business for a long time, and I beat people who wrote books about this stuff. So it's a good exchange and dialogue. Everybody gets their fair share of time. That would be my job, is to balance that, or that has been a job when I've done it, to balance that out and sort of point questions or invigorate the audience by asking questions also. So that's something to consider there. For example, something like that, I would bring my friend Mark from Luxembourg to sit in and participate on that, right? And he would gladly do that with us. And you know, I'd suggest you get an insurance underwriter as well as perhaps a broker. You get different opinions from both of them.
Right.
And a banker, you know, whether it be a regional bank such as ours, or even sometimes a smaller bank, or in addition to a smaller bank and a bigger bank. And, you know, I never would take anybody who makes it I, me in that scenario, because if they're on a panel like that, they're representing their capabilities, their credibility in the marketplace, and their institution is part of that. So you avoid the sales pitch angle to that by any one of those parties. It kind of works pretty well, but it would lend itself nice to what you're trying to do there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what's nice about the Export New York program too is there'll be like 7 to 10 companies that'll be going through this together, but it's not necessarily the same people that attend every session. If they want to send their finance people to one in particular, when you were doing something like the Exim Bank thing, then, you know, they're not limited to how many people they can have participate. It's basically the company belongs, right, Jim? Is that
That's correct.
But my good friend and colleague Carmel, he does a ton of that kind of stuff. You know, we call it, not in a bad way, you know, dummy 101, trade 101, which starts with documentary collection, payment. Unfortunately, you know, that's a lion's share of what Carmel does, and she's great at that. But that's another pitch point, another angle. But there's a lot of education to that process, and it's just what you described. It involves bringing in the people to handle with the freight forwarders, who handle the documentation, who handle the collections, the credit, the billings, etc. So that's an important. That's usually a very, very important presentation to be able to be making.
Yeah. Well, the decision for a company to export, it's not just one person that decides that. It impacts so many pieces of the company. You got to take care of the education for all of it.
Yeah. And you know what? At the end of the day, it's no different from the bank. We have to make sure we do what we do well and right, because at the end of the day, we have to get paid back. And similarly, a company has to make sure they do it right because they want to get paid too. Because if neither one of us gets paid, it's a bad situation for all of us.
Right. Yep. That'd be good. So the only comment I was going to make is, you know, Bill, you were talking about how the world's gotten so much smaller. This was a personal achievement of my own. I just figured out how to use Amazon from in Singapore and Italy this past week. And how to use so I got to thinking about, so when somebody sells to Amazon, is it just in the US, or are they missing an opportunity to sell to Italian Amazon and Singapore Amazon? I don't know how that works. I know I can go and buy their stuff.
You were with that truck place, fence, which begins with a V. Did you get them signed up?
I think that's a great question to ask a company is, are you exporting? And if so, where and why, and what are your problems? They probably have some, I won't say logistical problems, but they may have credit problems, which nobody wants, but they may have inability to tap or access certain markets.
Yeah.
So our job is to de-risk it for them.
Yeah.
Saw Mark Young yesterday.
I don't know if we took too much time or too little time here, but
It's
you
a,
know,
it's a small group, so
we-
good.
yeah. Yeah. You know, I think one of the concerns had with this pandemic was, I don't think we ever envisioned, you know, the whole country, the whole world shutting down. You know, we had these recovery efforts. We say, oh, what happens if one of our divisions loses its phone for a week? So, you know, I think one of the concerns we had is, do these systems hold? And they did. You know, the VPN held up for all of us, in the entire bank, for not only our bank, but all the banks, for all the companies. So in that respect, you know, we learned a lot in a short period of time about how to sometimes get these messages out. And, you know, I have kids that are younger than my kids working in the bank, and whenever I have a technology question, I might not even call the help desk, because these young kids know how to push all these buttons to get this stuff done.
Look at the teenager that lives next door. I know, that's what we do.
But if there's one message I could reiterate again, if we're not having these conversations with our market-based whatever, our competitors are.
Yeah.
Our competitors are. So more than we can make people aware of opportunistic programs and solutions to their problems, we can help everybody. That helps. It's a banking issue and it's a corporate issue. We're in that same boat together.
Yeah. This is very helpful.
And
for
the other simple question is, and it's a one question asked with two parts, it's any company should be asked, who are you exporting to? Where are you buying from? Two questions. And what are your problems with each? Because that's going to touch on everything that Patrick does, what I do, what you do. Two questions for the little sidebar. And what are your problems? And I tell our people, just start writing down, because they're going to have many.
And I take it back one step further. If you're not exporting, how come? And how do we help?
So that's it.
Because they're afraid to, right? It's complicated.
I think we find pockets of small companies that are real good at it. And maybe we can make them better, but if the fact that you can point it out to a market or somebody else that they thought, well, maybe there's no way I can include foreign-based receivables in a borrowing base. Or maybe I've got real concern about getting repaid, well, then don't do the deal. But if it's a logistic model, credit insurance could be a thing to be considered. It does have a role. So, but I appreciate all of your time and effort in putting these things together. And we as Citizens Bank like to be part of the communities that we sit in and work around. And I think our bank does a real good job at showing its flag in a number of different ways across not only products, but addressing community needs. And I think that's really important to us to try and expand on that also.
Thank you for your expertise. We appreciate it.
Yep.
And I'm sure you'll be hearing from us.
Yeah, looking forward to furthering the discussion.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you. Hey,
Yeah,
look,
hey,
the back page of the presentation has our Patrick, we're on there, all the contacts are there. If you need to, Carmel is a tremendous point person for me in the bank and all these things, ranging from the Dummy's Guide to Trade on up to products like this. And then, of course, Patrick is my guru on foreign exchange. Don't need to go any further than him on that.
There you go. Cindy, I just wanted to thank Bill and Carmel and Patrick for participating, and thanks, Cindy, for putting this together. I appreciate it. I really do.
Yes.
Certainly.
Thanks, Cindy.
And
Thank you.
we have it recorded so that if, we find people are interested to learning more about it, we can, you guys, I'm sure you're good with it. We can send out the recording. We've got the presentation that we can forward to them as well.
Excellent. Great.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Great. All right.
Thanks,
Thanks,
all.
everybody.
Thank you all very
Thanks,
much.
everybody.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Phil.
All right. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.